When you hear the name Dimitar Berbatov, what do you remember of the man? You probably recall a great player on and off the ball, wicked flair, a good reader of the game, a lethal goal scorer, and a legend, no doubt. But what if we told you what you remember isn't the complete picture? What if we told you that by the expectations of a forward, he was a rather lazy player? It doesn't compute, right? And for good reasons too. His work rate on the pitch was next to nothing. He neither fought for the ball nor got into the thick of things. Berbatov just coasted along, waiting for everyone else to do all the work and hand him the ball on a platter. But when that ball got to him, the laziness, the poor work rate, all of that disappeared, because Berbatov became magic in the flesh. It's why you never remember he wasn't the best player when the team was on the back foot. But you sure remember his iconic goals and the magic he worked in the opponent's box when he had the ball. His output overshadowed everything else. Berbatov was known as a luxury striker. You'd think the man would shy away from this perception of him, but he leaned into it. In an interview about his playstyle, he responded, "Those without beauty and grace in them are powerless to win a heart." One of his coaches once said, everything he plucked out of the sky seemed to die on his toe. But a controversial playing style wasn't the only side of Dimitar Berbatov. Hardly. He was many things, an outcast, a target, but ultimately a legend. Berbatov's story began like your typical hero's journey, alone, unknown, and in a small patch he called home. Silly as it sounds, his brand of lazy luxury football was the result of years of hard work in the jungles of Bulgaria. First, he started with an inflated pig's bladder, then switched to a basketball. The routine was simple. Throw everything in the air and control its descent with his foot. Every evening of every day, he practiced year after year. He must have tried hundreds, thousands of times. And if you're wondering what causes a young boy to torture himself like that, well, Berbatov was a sports prodigy born to a professional footballer father and a semi-pro handball mother. He had athletic genes already. All he needed was where to channel it. Inspiration, if you will. For that, all little Berba needed to see was the World Cup, in which Bulgaria came away as fourth runner-up thanks to Stoichkov. But Berbatov didn't want to become Stoichkov. Instead, he idolized Alan Shearer and Marco van Basten. He loved the Englishman for his lethality in front of goal, but he loved the elegance with which the Dutchman played. Why choose one when you can have the best of both worlds? And that was how Dimitar Berbatov was born. A vintage forward with the flair of a butterfly, the creativity of a raccoon, and a predatory instinct inside the penalty box akin to a bird of prey. A one-of-a-kind player. Berbatov was 18 when he joined his first club, CSKA Sofia. He staked his claim on the team gradually. First, he scored 6 goals in his debut campaign, followed by 16 the following season. By his third season, he was already slapping 7 goals past Tiraspol across 2 legs in the UEFA Cup. By the end of the year, Berbatov had played 15 matches and scored 16 goals across all competitions. However, much like many stars today, simply being good isn't good enough to get everyone on your side. He had split the audience in 2. One half loved him perhaps a little too much, while the other half blamed him for not helping the club top the league. You'd think it was the crowd that disliked the young wonder kid that would get him in trouble, but that was far from it. What nearly got Berbatov in trouble was being too damn good. It was a few months into the season, and Berbatov was at CSKA Sofia's training complex. By midday, he decided to grab a bite and left the grounds. As soon as he stepped out, a black car approached him, almost like it had been waiting for him the entire time. A friend of his family was in the car, and he urged the young Berba to get in. He got in and followed his host to a restaurant. Upon entering the restaurant, he found a lone figure sitting down to lunch, surrounded by a bunch of huge, tough-looking men. Unknown to Berbatov, he'd been handed over to the Bulgarian mafia. The man eating, whom he was directed to speak with, was none other than the infamous Georgi Iliev. Despite his ties to the criminal underworld, Iliev was an avid sports fan and the owner of a football club, Levski Kyostendil. The orders were simple. Berbatov was great, and Levski Kyostendil needed a player of his quality. This wasn't a club chairman courting a player ahead of the transfer window. No, this was a life and death offer. As one of Berbatov's relatives recalled, they would rather finish him than have him play for another club. Such an offer in front of a tough crowd would make a lot of us agree to the terms in a heartbeat, but not Berbatov. His persona on the pitch was the same as off the pitch: cool, calm, and collected. Berbatov requested a phone call. He rang his father, who understood his son's situation, and immediately reached out to Ilya Pavlov, the owner of CSKA Sofia. Now, Pavlov had strong ties to the criminal world, being a mafia boss himself, so he was able to convince Ilyev to let Berbatov go. This was no small miracle. The Bulgarian criminal underbelly was as cutthroat as they'd come at the time. In fact, in a few short years, Ilyev and Pavlov were in pine boxes under the ground, both taken out by snipers. So, Berbatov leaving unscathed was monumental, even though anticlimactic in the end. Whatever the case, Berbatov never shared the full story with his family, but that encounter lit within him a fire to take his football elsewhere, out of Bulgaria for good. Berbatov's dream came true with a switch to German side Bayer Leverkusen. The club was in its best years yet and was terrifying Europe with its golden generation of stars like Michael Ballack, Zé Roberto, and Lucio. Berbatov said he felt like the luckiest boy in the world to have joined the club at that time, long before it was evident that Leverkusen were on their way to making history. 6 months into his move, he made his debut in a friendly match against DC United, where he scored a hat-trick to put him on the manager's radar, earning him a spot in the team as a rotation player. By the 31st game of that season, Berba had started 13 times and shipped 15 goals. Leverkusen were high-flying and sitting daintily at the top of the table, 4 points ahead of second place. The club had also made it to the Champions League final, having beaten Manchester United, Liverpool, Arsenal, and Juventus on the way. Berbatov himself had chipped in with 5 goals in 5 matches. Everything seemed right with the world. Up until that moment, Leverkusen had never won the league and had but 1 trophy to their name. Now they were in 2 finals, and with the league in their grasp, they were on the verge of a treble. What followed next was a level of bottling that would have made Arsenal and Tottenham applaud in awe. Leverkusen went on to lose their next 3 matches, losing the league to Dortmund and the German Cup to Schalke. All that was left was the Champions League. The only problem was that the club standing between Leverkusen and the trophy was none other than Real Madrid. The golden generation of Leverkusen was no match for the tested and proven Galacticos of Los Blancos. Berbatov himself admitted that he was mesmerized by the players when standing next to them in the tunnel. And despite towering over Fernando Hierro, Berbatov said it felt like looking at a mountain. Halfway into the match, his fears were proved right, as Zinedine Zidane spanked in one of his best goals in a Real Madrid shirt, and Leverkusen went on to lose the final. After losing out on a treble, he said he wanted to become the Maradona of Leverkusen. But that was easier said than done, because Bayern Munich poached Ballack and Zé Roberto the following season. The golden generation was starting to fall apart, and nothing proved that more than the fact that Leverkusen were facing relegation with 2 games left that season. But Berbatov was just getting started. The next season, Bayer were back to fine form, thanks to the Bulgarian who chipped in with 13 goals and 8 assists in 18 matches. By the end of the campaign, the club finished 9 points off the top. From that moment onward, Berbatov ceased to be a fringe player. He became the main man. However, there was only so much his good numbers could do because the Leverkusen ship started to go down again. They couldn't break into the top 4 again. Lots of clubs circled the sinking ship, picking it apart for its best players, and Berbatov was the prime target. Berbatov switched sides, picking Tottenham out of the better clubs coming for his signature. At the time, they were a mid-table club that finished 11th in the league on average across 15 years. And the last time the club played in the Champions League, Berbatov had not yet been born. A huge step down from a high-flying Leverkusen team. Berbatov and Robbie Keane struck up a partnership that bordered on telepathic, and Keane's high work rate more than made up for Berba's laid-back style. They complemented each other well. The Bulgarian admitted this himself, saying, "Robbie ran all over the pitch, so that I could run in my head." In his first season in England, Berbatov pulled off even better numbers than in the Bundesliga, making 38 goal contributions and averaging a goal every 102 minutes. It's no surprise that he finished as Tottenham's Player of the Year, made it into the EPL Team of the Season, and was nominated for the Ballon d'Or. The cherry on top was helping Tottenham finish 5th, and they'd have won some silverware too had Spurs' back line not been as incompetent as goldfish out of water. By his second year, Berbatov scored a decisive goal in the League Cup final to hand Tottenham their last trophy to date. In 2 years, he was having a swell time in North London, surrounded by a team almost tailored to his playing style. But he was 28 years old and had little to no silverware to show for his enterprising career. Doubt started to creep in when he considered leaving Tottenham. Then Manchester United coach Sir Alex Ferguson picked this moment to tell the media that he planned to sign the Bulgarian. It made no sense for United to want Berber. They had the best attacking trio in the league in Cristiano Ronaldo, Carlos Tevez and Wayne Rooney, all of whom played pacey attacking football with a high work rate. What would Fergie want with a luxury striker? It's possible that the United boss only admitted to this to destabilize opponents and send a shockwave throughout the league for any of Berbatov's admirers. He was a master of mind games, the Scotsman, because that's exactly what happened. The attention turned to Berbatov's head, and more clubs started to declare their intent for him too. Tottenham knew they'd lost their man to the media frenzy when he requested to be left out of the team. And, would you believe it, he landed in Manchester sometime later. But he wasn't heading to Old Trafford. No, he was on his way to the blue half of Manchester. Then came Fergie again, showing up at the airport and giving him a ride to United instead. The two hung out for a few hours, and by the end of the day, Berbatov had betrayed both City and Tottenham and signed for Manchester United. United would go on to have a brilliant season, making it to the Champions League final. However, that was hardly due to Berbatov's efforts. He played a small part in that run, and by his second season, he was still unconvincing to the Old Trafford faithful. Critics and fans called him lazy, and his performances hardly proved them wrong. But that wasn't all his doing. Back in Bulgaria, the mafia had struck again. They approached his mother and requested £500,000 for her protection. She refused, of course, but that only escalated things as the criminals then threatened to kidnap Berbatov's wife and daughter. Berber knew that expecting another miracle on his second run-in with the Bulgarian mafia was pointless, so he began contacting everyone he thought would help. He was threatened not to involve the authorities, as it was more than likely that the Bulgarian Internal Affairs Ministry was involved in the scheme. What happened next is reminiscent of his first time facing down the mafia. Berber, cool as a cucumber, asked to borrow Sir Alex Ferguson's private jet to fly to Bulgaria. When he arrived, he set up a meeting and got his family to safety without paying the ransom required. No one knows how Berbatov managed to talk them down a second time, nor did he reveal the details of what happened. You'd think that with everything he was going through, Fergie would cut him some slack, but you'd be wrong. The difference between good and great managers is that the latter borders on insanity, and we all know Fergie was tremendous. He was frustrated with the Bulgarians' end product and started to show it. Thankfully, the second coach, René Moulenstein, was more patient and understanding. He saw a path to unlocking Berbatov. In the Dutchman's words, Berber wasn't a footballer, he was an artist who happened to wear football boots. Moulenstein spoke with Berbatov and helped him get into the right headspace. See, Berbatov was at odds with the team because they played at a higher tempo than he could manage or was used to. He was 30 at the time, so changing playing styles was out of the question. Moulenstein was key to solving this dilemma. He told Berbatov, "You're like the best pianist in the world, but you see, those guys out there in the training pitch, they're the world's greatest orchestra, and they have a maestro who worked very hard to get them to play like this. The only difference is that you play at a different tempo. Match theirs and you'll win everything." Berbatov took this advice, and within a year of almost losing his family, finished as the top scorer in the Premier League and enjoyed several brilliant performances across the season. He scored 21 goals and racked up 6 assists. United won the league trophy, and Berbatov finished in the team of the season. He'd done enough to earn Fergie's respect that season, and the manager compared him to club legend Eric Cantona. But that didn't stop Fergie from doing Berbatov the greatest disservice. Despite having a stellar year and having won the Golden Boot, Berbatov was excluded from what could have been the cherry on top of an eventful career, the Champions League final. He wasn't even on the bench. He was left at home to watch as United lost that final. Things didn't improve much the following season. Fergie was implementing a new style of play that prioritized pace, and Berbatov was on the wrong side of 30 and stuck with a playing style that was 2 decades too old for football of the 2010s. He played 12 more matches before Fergie soft-fired him. Berbatov got the message and bowed out without a proper goodbye. Despite links to Tottenham, Juventus, Bayern and Fiorentina, he opted for Fulham to join former Tottenham boss Martin Jol. Then he went to Monaco, PAOK and the Indian Super League before retiring. Berbatov started working on his autobiography soon afterward and asked Ferguson to write the foreword despite the strained relationship between the two. Fergie agreed easily and sent back his part a few weeks later. In it, the Scotsman apologized for depriving Berbatov of a chance to end his career on a high. This begs the question, would that final have ended differently with Berbatov in the squad? I guess we'll never know. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe and share if you enjoyed this video.